cold out here today.
Rodrigo.
What was that?
He's over.
You know, maybe we should go inside. I think it's time for your review.
Para. New. Para.
The Hunt for Red October stars Sean Connery and Alec Baldwin and is directed by John McTiernan. Within the closing years of the Cold War, the Soviet Union has developed a new and highly advanced nuclear missile submarine, equipped with cutting-edge stealth technology giving it the capability of remaining undetectable from passive sonar. At its helm is Captain Marco Ramius, played by Sean Connery, a highly respected officer of the Soviet Navy who receives orders to conduct a series of drills with the vessel. But Ramius has intentions of his own.
Russians don't take a dump, son, without a plan.
To complicate matters further, he announces these plans to a high-ranking official in the Russian government.
In the name of God, why?
The results ignite the fury of the Soviet Navy, who begin hunting the warship. Meanwhile, CIA analyst Jack Ryan, played by Baldwin, who has studied Ramius for years, believes he has deduced the Soviet captain's true intent. The trouble is that the American government cannot afford to base their actions on his hunch, so it rests on Ryan to find a way to prove his theory. What follows is a deep story of espionage and intrigue that is constantly weaving its way through the tensions of two countries on the brink of war. Check out this t-shirt! John McTiernan had previously directed two absolute classics of cinema, first in Predator and later in Die Hard. Not Die Hard 2. Honestly, you think the guy who did Predator would have settled for Naked Haywood as a villain? And if there's anything that's very clear about the man from these first two films, it's that he's very keen when it comes to structure. But what's different about Red October is that he's put together something far more methodical and technical when viewed in comparison. Whereas most of his, and even most military films, have more bang and action, this film moves as quiet and as dangerous as the sub for whom it's named. If you're looking for a film with explosions, sinking ships, and drowning sailors, best to look elsewhere. This is not a movie about sub-life. However, if you're looking for intrigue and a quiet but deep suspense, you've just struck gold, my friend.
Perhaps.
Now with that, be warned that this film isn't for the more casual of moviegoers. Being based off of Tom Clancy's book, which launched him into fame as a novelist, the film's screenplay, like the novel, is highly technical. Oftentimes, explanations are given to help break down the dialogue in a way that today feels very Nolan-y.
This thing could park a couple of hundred warheads off Washington and New York, and no one would know anything about it till it was all over.
It's a movie that admirably maintains much of its complexity while keeping it an engaging watch for the viewer. And to be honest, it's kind of rewarding too. I mean, really, there's something about watching this movie that makes you feel smarter for being able to follow it, and even more so when you can recognize when someone else references it.
Stealth drive engaged. Only way they'll detect us is if you all start singing the Russian national anthem.
God, I love that.
The movie is also helped along by excellent practical effects and stellar performances. More on those performances in a bit, but for now, let's go ahead and talk about some of these effects. Now, as I've mentioned before, I love practical effects. I love good practical effects. See, I actually did say that. I tend to think that practical effects are nearly always better than relying on computer-generated imagery. Coming from a time where CG still looked pretty shoddy, I'm very glad that this film elected to use practical filmmaking to tell its story, because it allows it to still hold up exceptionally well. The submarines shot above and below the water feel very lifelike, and in most shots, they're not actual subs. Most are models that feel as big as the spaceships in Star Wars. The sets are also extremely effective in this movie. Any filmmaker will tell you that shooting in a submarine is not a particularly great idea, but the sets that these men are moving through give you the same enclosed feel. And again, similar to how Christopher Nolan would later film the hallway fight scene in Inception, the sets in Red October were also built on a gimbal to add authenticity to the shifts and turns one would experience on a real-life submarine. They're also designed to never let us get lost when a scene shifts to another boat. We see lots of chrome for the Red October, giving it a sharp, advanced feel. The Dallas utilizes red lighting and keeps computer screens present in the frame. The Konovalov is dark and moody, with only eerie green lighting present to give us a sense that there's a tension here that's different from the other ships. Even the frigate that appears later is distinguishable by its deep blue lighting. It's a detail that doesn't strike you at first, but upon observation, you can't help but be thankful for, because it's the texture from which we can grip the story. Now let's come back to those performances. Sean Connery, who was a last-minute casting choice, believe it or not, slides into this role with cool confidence, amazingly giving us someone to root for without even knowing all of their motivations. Even playing a Lithuanian, his Scottish accent is hardly hidden, but it's Sean Connery, I give him a pass. And it's also kind of interesting that Connery almost passed this role up due to a mishap the studio had when faxing his script to him. I mean, to think we almost missed out on this amazing Connery performance just because of a faxing error. I mean, isn't that crazy?
It is.
And you know, with all of these Nolan comparisons I've been making, it's kind of got me wondering what it would have been like if Connery was in one of them. You mustn't be afraid to dream a little bigger, darling. Some men just want to watch the world burn. Why so serious? There's something wrong with me. Alec Baldwin also is very impressive in his depiction of Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan. He dials back his more humorous personality and instead gives this character a softer, more intelligent take. While Harrison Ford would take on this role later in 2 more films and do a really great job, Alec Baldwin is still my personal favorite interpretation of the character. It's really nice looking back and seeing him in this more dramatic role because he shows a tremendous amount of dedication to it, even to the point of letting himself be dangled by a helicopter and falling into the ocean.
It's a pleasure to be aboard.
I also have to say that the supporting cast here is excellently selected as well. First you have Scott Glenn as the collected American captain, Sam Neill as the Russian navigator, James Earl Jones as Ryan's boss, and even Tim Curry as the Russian doctor. And those are just the more notable names, but even the rest of the supporting cast clearly stand out and are every bit as engaging to watch. Now, there are only really 2 things that I can point to being any kind of flaw in this film. The first one doesn't really bother me as much, but it may others, so it is worth considering, and that is the authenticity of some of the material presented. It's bound to bug some that the submarines are depicted a bit flashier than these models appear in real life, though, as I said before, I think a lot of this is to the audience's benefit. Then there's also the matter of Connery's accent, which I can understand people being miffed about a bit more. And then there's that Christopher Columbus line that's quoted at the end of the movie that, sorry, wasn't actually Christopher Columbus.
Damn it, Bill!
I guess it sounded better coming from him than the film's screenwriter Larry Ferguson.
And I ain't chief of the boat, I'm actually Sheena, queen of the jungle.
Which brings me to the screenplay, which again is very technical and will be for some hard to follow. For those people, I might recommend watching this movie with subtitles if it's your first time, just so you can get a grip on the plot. Ooh, and speaking of English, what? Speaking of subtitles, this movie has the greatest transition from another language to English. I'm not kidding, it is the best ever done. I'm sorry. I just had to get that out. Now, like I said before, none of what I've mentioned here really bothered me when watching this film, and it really didn't impact my final score of it either, though admittedly something else did. While I really applaud this movie for maintaining the complexity of its characters, I do feel like some are shrouded in just a bit too much ambiguity. For instance, in the final act, Jack Ryan has to square off with, well, someone. Don't get me wrong, the standoff is cool, and the context of the situation adds weight to the moment. But it is kind of distracting not to have much understanding of what motivates the other character. You'll be lucky if you can remember why they're doing what they're doing at all. And while the film addresses the fact that each character has their reasons, I feel that just an inch further to understanding some of these could have made it a bit more compelling.
This seeding of the ultimate villain on board is, I've got to admit, frail. I suppose we should have kept cutting to the guy over and over again to build suspicion about him, but...
You don't miss much, do you?
The Hunt for Red October is rated PG for language and violence, including a death scene that, while brief, is still pretty intense. The Hunt for Red October is exceptionally well made. The writing is tight, the acting is outstanding, and its level of suspense is rarely matched in my opinion. To get a little personal, Red October is very special to me, as it was perhaps the first highly intellectual movie I ever watched. Just try picturing me at 7 or 8 years old trying to watch The Hunt for Red October. I think you might understand why I didn't initially take to this film. I'm not sure if my little brain could handle it just yet. No, it wasn't until I was about 12 years old that I really started to appreciate this film. It was during that period of time where, you know, you're watching movies and actually starting to pay attention to what they're about. And this one really stuck with me, and I still watch it fairly regularly now. And as much as I absolutely adore it, honestly, this really is one of my favorites of this year. That doesn't keep me from seeing that there were just a few slight opportunities missed to make it more applicable to the audience. That being said, I can't hold it against this movie too much because it really is an incredibly good picture. For a story this complex, it's amazing to me that it turned out as good as it did. I am giving The Hunt for Red October 4.5 out of 5.
One ping only, please.
Guys, thank you so much for checking out this review today. It's really nice after, 5 spoiler videos? 3 of them being Troll 2, to be back to some more quality material again. I also want to thank you guys for being so patient with me over the last couple of months. Troll 2 was a very difficult project, and currently Beth and I are also house hunting, which is eating into some of my spare time, but I'm going to try really hard not to let it impact this too much. On another note, I recently got to guest spot on Meddlers Incorporated, which is a podcast that offers commentaries for Scooby-Doo episodes and movies. I got a chance to sit with these guys and review/observe the dynamic Scooby-Doo affair featuring Batman and Robin. I had an absolute blast doing this and getting to hang out with these guys. I'm telling you, they are absolutely loaded with material, and I really wish I could think on my feet the way that these guys do. So if you're a fan of Scooby-Doo, definitely check them out on iTunes. I will include that name in the description below. And again, thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys later, and don't forget, you're on Real Time with Joe.